Hello and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video we'll be concentrating on how you nail the pre-1900 poetry section of the AQA A-level paper, specifically for AS. Essentially you're given a poem that's named and you have access to the anthology, but I want to walk you through what each AO means and represents so that you can do yourself proud. So as you can see, AO1 is always about ideas and clarity. My suggestion is that you discuss the poem as a whole first and then work your way through it chronologically. And if you can, try and link and weave ideas together. A way you could do that is by referencing initially we see X, when, and you kind of go through the device or the effect it has on us. Later we see it here, perhaps in stanza 2, whatever. Finally, this is a great way of signalling to the examiner that you have a clear understanding of the structure of this poem and that you are making links across the poem, not just in the one stanza that you love the most. The key to doing well in terms of conveying your ideas is to embed your quotes so you're not clunkily trying to refer to evidence. My suggestion is also that you try and wrap up at the end the link to love. This paper is called Love Through the Ages, so referring back to love is important. It's the seminal feature of this paper. Something like ultimately or fundamentally the poet seems to be suggesting that love is X, is a way of conveying you have really evaluated and thought about it. Undeniably, clarity is key to do well on AO1. That involves no accuracy errors, be that spelling or syntactical, and also clear signalling across your essay that you're logically weaving through your argument and that there is a logical argument. Next up, as you know, both AO1 and AO2 are the heavyweights in each of the questions that you would sit in AS, but specifically AO2 is the key to unlocking what the writer is doing. But the big money marks don't just come from listing these different things, whether it's the narrator or the speaker, the imagery, the alliteration, the tense, the figurative language, the verbs, the adjectives, the use of pronouns, the repetition, the effect of punctuation, caesura, enjambment. We could list on and on. But it's the effects of each of these devices that gets the marks. Why has the poet chosen to include them? What is the impact for us as readers? This needs time and investment, and if you can, when you reread the poem in the exam, look for the key trends that offer you some sort of key. My suggestion is also that you go back over my videos where I list in quite a lot of detail the linguistic devices that each of the poets has used, and try and symbolise and reference what it does for you, so you have your own personal viewpoint, which becomes more important as we go through. So now we move into looking at context. AO3 is about historical context, so it makes sense for me to navigate you through Love Through the Ages in terms of the historical time period. Now bear with me, this is a whistle-stop tour and I'm sure there's more mileage in me creating more detailed videos on this. But for now, let's just go through, beginning at the beginning of the spec with the Renaissance. This is the rebirth of classical learning. There's huge homage paid here to the Roman and Greek literature, which brought us mythological references and logic. But here, in the Renaissance, we meet for the first time English, imitating other Romantic languages like French, Spanish and Italian, to create its own name as English, the language of love. Both Whoso Lister Hunt and Sonnet 116 fit within the Renaissance. Now as we move through time, we meet the metaphysical movement. It's at the height of Stuart debauchery. We've got this emerging debate going on between what's physical and what's spiritual. And there seems to be a more relaxed attitude towards religion in society in these times. There's definitely an emergence of satire and this sort of almost lads-on tour mindset. When we look at John Donne's The Flea, and to his Coy Mistress by Marvell, we are looking at those things at odds, what's spiritual with what's physical, and we see lust in operation, which matches that more relaxed attitude towards moral propriety through the relaxation around religion in these times. Now, I've conflated together the Cavalier movement with the Restoration, because actually there's a similar trend of pushing the boundaries to challenge conservative establishment. In this time period, we see that there's a playfulness with language and form, which also means there's an ongoing improvement of the way satire is operating. But this is all in the name of mocking Puritan attitudes, almost the backlash of what happened after the metaphysical movement. So the scrutiny by Richard Lovelace and Rochester's Absent from Thee are all very clear examples of pushing boundaries, mocking Puritanism, and definitely performance almost of the poetry for a male coterie who's reading this and is fascinated at court by the way that the objectification of women is playful and fun. And now we move forward to a totally different kind of era within poetry, where love is in adversity, and we're looking at Romanticism. As William Wordsworth described it in his preface to Lyrical Ballads, it's the spontaneous overflow of emotions. Now, I Fond Kiss by Robert Burns, Garden of Love by William Blake, She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron, these are all first-generation poets alongside Wordsworth who believe that nature and purity and simplicity are the best way to convey the innocence of love. But we also have in our collection, far later down historically, but definitely matched in terms of his ideals, John Keats with La Belle Dame sans Merci. He's a second-generation romantic. He tries to bring back the medieval ballad, in fact, to prove the echoes of the same ideals about love in adversity, purity. And then we move further forward, pushing ourselves onto the Victorian era. Here, women are confined to the domestic sphere, the hearth and the home, whilst men are in the public sphere, with its politics, business and commerce. This is a strict society. It's got conservative ideals. It's repressed in its religious attitudes. It's almost a reaction to the sort of rebellious overtones of what's gone before with the Romantic period. At an Inn, The Ruined Maid and Remember are all examples of poems that fit neatly into this historical time period. Rossetti's aims are significantly different to what Hardy is seeking to achieve. They both show a social awareness about what's not right in society. More to be said about that in AO4 as I continue. And then finally, the fin de siècle movement. I'm so sorry, my French accent is not worth it. The end of the century is what it really translates to. And here we have Ernest Dawson. He's rebelling against conservative Victorian values. He's got quite a decadent movement backing him, but it's indulgent, it's got liberal content associated to it. It's the dawn of a new era, and Nonsum Qualis echoes the same themes and ideas that match that historical time period that's labelled as the decadent movement. Now, your job in your essay is not simply to list verbatim the historical time periods, no. It's good, though, to drop in a reference to other poems in the collection, whether it's as I've just referred to in AO3 about the historical time period and the kind of movement that these poems belong to, or now what I will share with you, which is the structural links between these other poems. So let me begin. For AO4 we're looking at literary links, so it makes sense for me to be referring to poems that match in terms of style and structure. So let's start with the Petrarchan sonnets. It's often considered to be the one that's immortalising a beloved, where you've got a problem and you try and solve it. Whoso lists to hunt and remember, both centuries apart, are Petrarchan sonnets. We only have one Shakespearean sonnet that's seeking to solve the problem, truly, and that's sonnet 116. There's a difference between the Petrarchan and the Shakespearean sonnet in that the immortalising of the beloved is the most precious thing in the Petrarchan sonnet. It's to put someone on a pedestal, yet the Shakespearean sonnet is to solve the issue of love. Now, it's obvious to say that the poems that are called song, whether it's Song Absent from Thee or Song I Fond Kiss, are expected to be set to music. And as you can see with I Fond Kiss, if you were to look it up on YouTube right now, you would find there are many versions that are set to music. But the joy of having these poems set to music is that there's a shared heightened sense of emotions between these. Even though one fits very neatly in restoration and one in romanticism, it still works beautifully. Next up we have the lyric. This is often associated with earnest individual perspectives, and that fits neatly into the fact that She Walks in Beauty and Scrutiny match that exact thing. It's ironic though, because the Scrutiny is obviously a sarcastic portrayal of an individual perspective of what went on the night before, whereas She Walks in Beauty genuinely feels earnest. Now, the telling of a story is clearly going to be the ballad, and it's called La Belle Dame sans Merci because it tells the story, and it's referred to as a ballad. Now, I referred to earlier as satire, the mocking and challenging of conventions, and we have the Flea, the Scrutiny, To His Coy Mistress, and Song Absent from Thee that do just that. Very much for a male readership, one could argue. Now, it's interesting, you could refer also to She Walks in Beauty as an ode. It's a celebration, a praise, immortalising and idolising the qualities of this woman. We've also got several dramatic monologues. Nonsense Qualis can be conveyed and read in this way, the Scrutiny equally, and To His Coy Mistress. I only see one duologue, though, and that is The Ruined Maid. The function of using these is simply to draw reference to the fact you get there are other links between poems in the collection. It's a great way of showing your perceptive understanding of love through the ages, not just with the named poem you're given. Another way to do this is to draw reference to how we as readers perceive things. For example, as readers in the contemporary sense, now we have views that might match those who first read the poem. So I might use the phrase, a contemporary reader like us might, and then I'd use these different verbs. Empathise, that means relate, condemn, sympathise, recoil, recognise the importance of, reflect, chastise, criticise, champion. Regardless, I think these are great ways of signalling your awareness of how contemporary readers at the time would have felt, and if we echo the same, how we do. I definitely recommend you incorporating that into your response because it not only backs up AO4, but leads me nicely onto AO5 as part of that analysis. Your job is to show as many possible interpretations of all the meanings you gathered and consider the poet's intentions. So you could say something like, Wyatt could be using violent imagery in Whoso Lives to Hunt to suggest this, or alternatively, it could imply that. By signalling like this, you are showing you've thought of alternative viewpoints. And for this section of the course, it's probably more straightforward not to be relying on critics, but your own interpretation. Best of luck with this pre-1900 poetry, and by all means check out my playlist on the pre-1900 poems if you need any further insight on exactly what to say about the AO2 of the poems. Good luck! Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?